The day I first tasted destiny wasn't on a battlefield, but in a silent arena, under the burning Macedonian sun, standing face to face with a creature everyone feared, a wild horse no man could tame, except me. I remember the day as clearly as if the dust of Pella were still on my sandals. I was 13, old enough to think I knew everything, but young enough to prove it in the most dramatic way possible. The sun was merciless. The air smelled of sweat and horses, and my father, King Philip, had gathered the finest horse traders in Macedonia. They had brought with them a massive, dark stallion, unlike any I had ever seen. His coat shimmered like black bronze, his eyes were wild and full of fire, and he tossed his head as if the very breeze annoyed him. They called him Bucephalus Oxhead, not the most flattering name, but in his defense, he did have a rather enormous forehead. At first, everyone admired him. A horse like that could carry a king, lead a charge, terrify enemies simply by breathing in their direction. But admiration quickly turned to frustration. Every trainer who approached him was tossed into the dust. Every attempt to mount him ended with kicking, biting, rearing, or all three at once. I watched as the greatest riders of Macedonia, tried veterans, champions of the cavalry, men with more scars than teeth, all were humbled in front of the crowd. My father grew impatient. Philip walked back and forth, muttering under his breath. I had seen that look before, the "I'm about to waste money, time, and possibly my sanity" look. Finally, he waved his hand and said, "Take the beast away. He is useless." Useless. That word stuck in my mind. I stepped forward, ignoring the nervous glances from the men around me. "Father," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "what a shame to lose such a magnificent horse because no one understands him." There was a pause. Philip raised an eyebrow. The crowd shifted. I could practically hear the older officers thinking, "Oh no, the prince is about to embarrass himself again." But I wasn't trying to show off. I had been studying the horse carefully. Bucephalus wasn't mad, he was terrified. Every time he faced the sun, he reared. His eyes were wide, his breaths frantic. That wasn't rage, it was fear. "Look at him," I said. "He's afraid of his own shadow." More muttering. Someone laughed. Another whispered, "Perhaps the prince fears his own shadow too." I ignored them. I walked slowly toward Bucephalus, speaking softly, not words of command, just sound, letting him know I wasn't a threat. He watched me with suspicion, ears pinned back. Then I did something ridiculous. I turned him toward the sun. His massive shadow shrank behind him. Immediately, his muscles softened. He still snorted at me, but the wild panic in his eyes faded. "See, he isn't mad," I said. "He simply needs someone who listens." I placed my hand on his neck. His skin trembled beneath my fingers, like a bowstring drawn too tight. Slowly, carefully, I stroked him until his breathing steadied. My heart raced. One wrong move, and I'd become a royal stain on the dirt. Then came the moment everyone remembers. I swung myself onto his back. Gasps all around. Someone shouted, "Get the prince down." Another cried, "Boy, are you trying to die before your time?" Bucephalus reared once, twice, but I held on. I whispered to him, pressed my knees, leaned forward so he could feel my balance. Then he bolted straight across the field. The wind roared past my ears. His hooves pounded like thunder. For the first time in his life, Bucephalus wasn't fighting his rider, he was running with him. I felt his power, his strength, the brilliant force of him. This was no ordinary horse. He was born for greatness. And somehow, I felt he knew I was too. When we finally slowed and returned, the crowd was silent. My father stared at me, half proud, half annoyed that his son had just upstaged him. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Son," he said, "find a kingdom worthy of your ambition. Macedonia is too small for you." I smiled, though inside something had shifted, something enormous, like mountains moving in the dark, because he was right. That moment with Bucephalus wasn't just about taming a horse. It was the first time I understood myself, my instincts, my courage, my hunger for greatness. If I could earn the trust of a creature like this, what else could I do? And trust me, I didn't stop reminding myself of that for the next decade. From that day on, Bucephalus was mine. And by mine, I mean he tolerated me while terrorizing nearly everyone else. He was the only creature who didn't care that I was a prince. When he was hungry, he bit me. When he was annoyed, he stepped on my foot. Once, he nearly kicked a general for calling him an oversized mule. Honestly, fair enough. But he was loyal. Fiercely, stubbornly loyal. During training, he never faltered. He carried me into countless drills, battles, charges, and storms. At Charania, at Granicus, at Issus. Everywhere destiny dragged us. Some said he was demonish, others swore he was Zeus's own stallion. Personally, I think he was simply too proud to die. Many nights after battle, I would sit beside him, brushing dust from his mane, speaking to him as though he understood me. Maybe he did. He'd nudge me with his nose, snort softly, or stand still when my thoughts were too heavy. Kings have advisors, counselors, bodyguards, but I had Bucephalus. Years later, crossing Persia, we entered a region where water was scarce and tempers shorter than a Spartan's patience. My men were exhausted. I was exhausted. Even Bucephalus dragged his hooves. One afternoon, a Persian cavalry ambushed us in a narrow ravine. Arrows flew. Horses screamed. I charged forward, and Bucephalus surged beneath me, brave as ever. But the ground was uneven. He stumbled. For the first time in years, fear stabbed through me, not for myself, but for him. After the ambush, he limped. Nothing broken, but enough to twist my stomach. That night, I refused to sleep. I stayed beside him, stroking his neck, whispering to him as I had the first day we met. The men whispered the king had lost his mind, and maybe I had. By dawn he rose, shook the dust from his mane, and snorted at me as if to say, "Get up. There's still an empire left to conquer." I laughed an unheroic, wildly relieved laugh, and we rode again. Every king has a defining moment, a quiet one, unexpected. Mine was a horse afraid of his own shadow. From him, I learned patience. I learned trust. I learned that strength is useless without understanding, that leadership is not forcing obedience, but earning loyalty. These lessons shaped every decision I made, every alliance, every battle, every impossible ambition I dared chase. They say I conquered the world, but first, I conquered fear. When Bucephalus grew old, I feared the day he could no longer carry me. Life, of course, pays no mind to a king's fears. During a battle in India, he was struck by a spear. He carried me to safety before collapsing. I knelt beside him, dust blood, shouting all around me, yet the world felt silent. He looked at me with the same fire he had the day we met. Loyal, proud, unbroken. When he drew his last breath, something inside me cracked quietly, deeply. I buried him with honors of a king, and named a city after him. Bucephala. Some called it sentimental, some foolish. They didn't know him. If you ask when I became Alexander the Great, I will not say at Issus or Gaugamela. I will say, the day I turned a frightened horse toward the sun. Before I conquered kingdoms, before I crossed deserts and mountains, before I faced empires, I befriended a horse. And in doing so I discovered myself.